Welcome to the season finale. I'm very privileged today to have Sammy Owino Kempes. This is our final episode of season one. So it's a huge privilege to have you on set. How have you been?
I've been doing good.
Okay.
I'm good. I appreciate you inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
I was telling someone earlier today that I never watched Sammy Owino Kempes play football, but from whoever watched Gor Mahia back in the 80s, they keep saying you are such a fine midfielder. But I never had the privilege of watching you live. I've looked over for videos before these episodes just to have an idea of what type of a midfielder you are.
Yeah.
I have got none.
Yeah.
But people keep saying that you're such a fine midfielder. How does that make you feel?
You know, I find it hard to judge myself. You know, it's always difficult for me to evaluate myself because you have to kind of remove yourself from who you are.
Yeah.
So I always find it very difficult. But I do feel good that people think that way. Some people think that way. I've had people tell me that sometimes. But for me, when I actually look at myself relative to some of the players I know,
Yeah.
I don't feel like that. I just feel like there were so many great players that were so much better who played in the same position. So
Who are some of these players?
to me, Alantigo, I joined Gor Mahia when he was actually about to retire. There was Timothy Ayeko, Jerry Imbo, there's Jonathan Niva, Kadir Farah. Those are some of them played before me.
Yeah.
Binzi Mwakolo. There's so many great players.
Which year did you join Gor Mahia?
I started, I played for my local, team called Umeme.
Yeah.
Then I was recruited by Luo Union.
Okay.
So Luo Union used to recruit a lot of players from that neighborhood, which was Ziwani.
Yeah.
And so they came and recruited me from there, and then played for Luo Union in the Eastern Central Club Championship.
Yeah.
I was 17 years old. I think I was the youngest player in the tournament.
Yeah.
And then from that, Gor Mahia recruited me. And then I ended up being called to the national team the following year, which was I was 18 years old.
Which year was this?
This was in 78. Yeah.
That was almost 10 years before I was born.
I know.
But you don't look your age.
No, I feel it. So maybe I don't look it, but I feel it.
Okay, so the trajectory seems to be during that era. If anyone wanted to play for Gor, you had to go through Umeme, then Luo Union, which transitioned into Reunion, then eventually into Gor Mahia, because I've had a lot of players that joined Gor Mahia from Nairobi. Actually, before that, played for Reunion or Luo Union.
Yes.
So that was the kind of trajectory. How was the scouting back then?
Because
I believe Luo Union or Reunion was not the only club then in Nairobi.
Yeah.
Or was there some sort of partnership between the two clubs?
No, there wasn't. It's always just one of those things. Gor Mahia was at the top.
Yep.
So even me growing up, I liked Luo Union.
Yep.
And actually Black Mamba, but because I could relate to Luo Union, because some of the players from Umeme had gone to play for Luo Union. So I just always kind of gravitated towards them.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting question you ask, because when I was before joining Luo Union, I don't remember who invited me to the Gor Mahia practice.
Yeah.
So I went and practiced with them. Obviously, I was very young, and they liked me. I remember even then at Antigo making good comments about me, but there was no really extension of an offer.
Yeah.
So they were interested, but they never offered me. And it's to your point, I think a lot of Gor Mahia recruited a lot from, you have to have proven yourself.
Okay.
So that's why I had to go to Luo Union. Then they realized I was good. And then I came back. So I always used to tell them, you had me, but you never took me. And there's a lot of trouble for them to get me from Luo Union, because there was some politics between Dan Owino, who was the Luo Union chairman and interested in running for FKF presidency, and Matiba, Kenneth Matiba.
Okay, now for those that really don't know that history, I'm one of them, I have to admit, and your background. Were you born around Ziwani? Just briefly tell us about your early childhood and development.
Yeah, I was born in Ziwani. My childhood was just amazing. Honestly, my best lives in terms of just happiness was when I was younger.
Okay.
We didn't necessarily have a lot of money. But I had a great family. I had great parents. We were 8 in the family. We were 8. There were 4 girls ahead of me. Then it was me, and then then another girl, and then 2 boys, and then and then another girl.
Okay,
at the
that's
end.
quite
So we had a
big
lot
family.
of girls. Yeah. So I grew up around girls. Most of the time, my mom would go. My dad would work in Nairobi, but mom would go to the rural areas.
Yep.
And so my sisters really, were my parents in some ways.
And how did you end up playing football?
It was just something you did.
Okay.
It's not something.
Having grown up in Ziwani, is that what you mean?
Yeah, you either played football, you either boxed, played badminton, but typically it was either football or boxing.
Not even cricket, because I know that around that neighborhood it was such a big thing
cricket.
back then.
Yeah, there was Ngara next to us,
Yep.
but that was mostly considered an Indian.
An elite sport.
Yeah, an Indian game. We couldn't afford the
wicket
equipment that went with that.
Okay.
Yeah, we were just had enough to just get a soccer ball.
Now, playing for Gor Mahia, you said at the age of 17, 18?
I played for Union at the age of 18, Gor Mahia at the age of...
that is unheard of these days. I mean, for a player that age, you have almost zero chance of playing for such a big club.
I was very fortunate.
Was it difficult for you?
It's funny, when you're at that age, you're just happy.
You're just enjoying your game.
You're just enjoying your game. Honestly, that was probably the easiest time of my soccer career. Yeah, because you have no sense of responsibility. You're just happy to get a chance. And you go in there and you're just enjoying yourself. And then as you get older, you start realizing this is serious business.
Yeah.
And now the weight of the responsibility comes along with that.
Yeah.
No, it was actually a lot of fun when I was the initial stages of my...
Would you say your parents and siblings supported your career?
No, they didn't. Actually, my mom always thought that football got in the way of education.
Yeah.
I think that's typical of most people. And then, and to some extent now, people identified football players with drinking alcohol and women. And that was...
I think it's still the same to most people, especially the
That's
old
what
folks.
they think. Yeah. But my mom and I were very close. My dad never really spoke much to me. He was a typical traditional family of the time, where the dad was the breadwinner, the mom took care of the home. Yeah. Even though my mom did other things, but she really tried to stop me. And when I got to a point, I remember my first game with the Luo Union. You'd sleep at the hotel the night before the game.
Yep.
And so Luo Union gave me a chance. They were playing at a club called Gamer.
Yep.
And because I didn't want to miss on the chance, I lied to my parents that my school was traveling to Nakuru. So that was a big deal. So they prepared stuff for me. I was very guilty. I was feeling very guilty because they gave me money. They had some money. They prepared stuff for me. Yeah. So that was a big trip. And then that was the most stupid thing I think I ever did, because the following day...
It was all over the papers.
That's the problem. Not even... Forget about the papers. The game's over. My neighborhood, they're running home to boast about...
about you playing.
Yeah. So I get home and, man, my mom called me all kinds of names. I don't even know the meaning of some of them, and pinched me at the same time when she was calling me names. But that was... so I went to Luo Union at the time, and I said, look, I don't think I can play for you anymore. Yeah. Because
that is after that incident.
Yeah, because the idea of having to sleep out is not gonna... Oh, they said, no, you did. Why didn't you just tell us? You didn't have to. Yeah. You could have slept home and it was okay.
For the game.
Yeah.
And well, you eventually went ahead to play for Gor Mahia, the biggest club by all standards in Kenyan football, even at the moment. Joined the national team. Did it at some point hit your mom that probably this is what you are made to do in your life? Yeah,
it took a while. I think what happened was, the thing I always told my mom, and I knew this from the very beginning, was that soccer provided the good and bad opportunities. And so it was really up to you to pick the ones that were good. So my mom, in the process, made me aware of my mortality as a football player, because she always reminded me that these things are temporal. Nothing about the money you get, the adulation is going to last forever. So there's just that sense of awareness. And I remember when the team manager was an incredible person in my life, and to some extent, my dad. I called him my second dad. He meant a lot to me. He was the Gor Mahia team manager at the time, and he took good care of me, and he extended the offer of paying for my tuition.
Oh, okay.
So that's when I think my mom started to realize the value of.
Is it from his own pocket or from the club?
No, I think it's from the club.
Okay.
I can't tell. I don't know whether he did it.
But then you were still in high school, right?
Yeah, I did my O-level.
Yep.
And I was playing and going to high school.
Yep.
So I was going for attending my A-levels when I was playing for Union and Gor Mahia. Yeah. So when they offered to pay for my my A-levels, then my mom saw the benefit of.
So at that point, she admitted you chose the right path.
Yeah, I think money changes a lot. Right?
Oh yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And then you eventually went to the US. How did that happen?
So I played, again, I took off from the national team because I was doing the A-levels.
Yeah.
And then once I graduated from my A-levels, I got recalled back to the national team.
Yeah.
And at the time, obviously, I'd played 2 years ago. I was now a well-known player.
Yeah.
And then as I was playing for Gor, I mean, we accomplished quite a bit.
Yep.
We won. I was looking the other day. Gor Mahia's won 3 Eastern Central Club regional championship. I won 2 of those. And the national team won 3. His senior, I won 1 of those.
Yep.
And so I played for Gor. I played for the national. I was a regular for Gor Mahia and the national team.
Yep.
And then I think, just like I said, a friend of mine, a friend of a friend, I was actually a friend of the team manager, approached me. He was a doctor. He said, do you know, I have a friend in
Gor Mahia
the
or the national team?
This was a friend of the team manager of Gor Mahia.
Okay.
Yeah, so he said, there's a friend of mine in the US that has an opportunity for you.
Okay.
He has a connection with this college in Alabama.
Yeah.
And he thinks, would you be interested? And so I said, of course I would, because my parents were very big in education. But it just so happened that at the same time, there's a player in Mombasa called Abdul Shakir.
Yeah.
Him and I were invited to play in Dubai.
Oh, okay.
So we went for tryouts there. So I came back, and there was that opportunity lingering.
Were those trials, right?
They were tryouts.
Oh, okay.
I went there for a month.
Okay.
So there was that opportunity lingering, and there was this education thing here. So I talked to my mom, and my mom looked at me and said, do you really need an answer? So
it was obvious.
It was obvious. So I said yes, and then the coach of the college came.
All over to Nairobi?
To watch.
Wow.
I think it was recruiting.
Yeah.
And then he liked Nashon and myself, and we ended up there.
How was the process? Was it difficult for you to eventually get to the US?
No, it wasn't. Actually, Nashon, my friend, was the first one to go through the process. I didn't even want to go, to be honest with you.
Yep.
And the reason was because life was good. You are 18 years old.
You're playing for Gor Mahia, you're playing for the national team.
Yeah, I was 20 years old. I was making money, playing for Gor Mahia, playing for the national team. In others, I wanted to go, but there was no urgency.
Yeah.
So I was kind of slow in accepting that.
Yeah.
And Nashon Lule, my teammate, is the one that started the process.
Yeah.
And when he went to the US Embassy, he really struggled to get his visa.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of warned. Yeah. They told me, when you go there, number one, don't go with a leather jacket. Those days, the hair, you left your hair long, and then they said, make sure your hair is trimmed.
Yeah.
Be very conservative when you can dress up really well. Wear a tie if you have to.
Yeah.
And so I was prepared because of what happened. So I went in there, presented my papers, and I got this time. I was really surprised.
What was the college in the US? What was the name of the university?
Alabama A&M University.
Okay. What are you going to study there?
Engineering.
That is what you always wanted to do.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do civil engineering because at Nairobi Technical, I did building construction.
Okay.
So my goal was to be an architect.
Yeah.
And so I went there, and turns out that that department was not accredited for that college. So I opted to do electrical engineering instead. Yeah.
So you did a degree on that?
Yes.
How were your early years in the US? Did you get any culture shock upon landing?
It was honestly, I can't, it's hard for people to understand this. I went from this young man who had this adulation, recognized wherever you go, and in 24 hours, I guess it's 24 hours, I went from that
to literally a nobody.
You're nobody. People think you're strange. People don't understand.
Just because you're black.
No, your accent, your culture, the way you behave was just very different. And at the time, things were a little bit different for black people as well. It wasn't the way it is now. So it was tough. It was actually very tough. It took me. It was harder than I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Which year was this?
This was in 82.
1982.
Yeah, very difficult. Mm-hmm. And the community of players is what helped, because it was a very, very strong team. We had 7 national team players from Ethiopia who were defected. We had about 9 players, youth team players from Nigeria that had just won the World Cup in Brazil.
Okay, you mean in the university team?
In that one team.
In the university team?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, okay.
We were very good.
And did you go straight into the team?
Yeah, I was a starter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why so?
The coach decides, The coach decides.
With all these big players, you say 8 10.
No, I think that's, you remember Gor Mahia was a very good team.
Yeah, sure.
When I left Gor Mahia, we had just gone to the finals of the African Club Championship. In 79, we reached the finals of African Club Championship.
Yeah.
So we were really good players.
Yeah, definitely.
And that was against the Cameroonian team that never lost a game in the World Cup. Yeah. 9 of the starters of the Cameroonian national team played for that club that we played against in the finals. Yeah. So we were very good players. Okay. And to me, at the time, I never really looked at Nigerians as good players, because we had eliminated them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's quite different now.
It was different, yeah.
So you would say football helped you cope with whatever was happening around?
Yeah, it helped. I think that my upbringing helped. My football really prepared me, the tough times you go through. I think everything prepares you in life. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, you said initially that you don't think you are the best, because there are players you played against.
I was definitely not the best.
But they never got that chance to go to the US or elsewhere. They never made a very good living, I'd say, out of football. Would you say you are very lucky to get this opportunity to go to the US?
Yes, I was fortunate. I think everything is just, there are people who are sometimes in life there are people better than you. Yep. And sometimes it's just God's grace. Yep. You get the opportunity that somebody else who's better than you doesn't get. Yep. I don't think, I'm not saying I wasn't a good player, but you can make the case that it could have happened to other players as well. Yeah. It just so happened that, somebody who knew me,
the connections, the network.
Yeah. I just tend to think that it would be very arrogant of me to think that there were a lot of good players. Yeah.
And now 4 years in the university, I believe you did your degree. Then what happened after that?
So my intent was to go, get my degree and come back. Yep. And Kenya, the education system here was very good. Yep. So for somebody like me, if you went to A levels, you focused on a specific area of your study. Yep. But for me, because I was doing engineering, I focused on maths, physics, and chemistry. So I did 3 subjects in my A levels. Yep. So the level of education that I had in those 3 areas, when I went to
the
US was equivalent to second year of college education.
So you got an exemption, you mean?
No, you don't get an exemption. The US people don't think much about African education, especially at the time, unfortunately. But it made it easier for me to do an overload. So instead of taking 16 credit hours, I'd do the 18 maximum, then I'd add extra. Wow. You are allowed to get with permission. Yeah. So I graduated in 2.5 years.
Instead of 4?
Instead of 4.
Well,
I
quite
did
impressive.
summer school also, because I really wanted to come back.
Yeah.
I did not like the US. I really didn't. But when I graduated, Gor Mahia kind of sent me tickets
To come back?
To come back. And everything had been set for me to come back.
During these 2.5 years, did you ever come back to Kenya before you
No, I was, are you kidding me? I couldn't even afford money
But you still had a contract with Gor Mahia? Or were they sending you a ticket?
There was no contract then. Those days there was no contract. Are you kidding? There were no contracts.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm asking.
You played football and you're on your own and you got injured and just nobody cared after that. No, it was very different times then. But after graduated, I wanted to come back.
Yeah.
So Gor Mahia sent me through another organization, international organization, send me a tickets and they get me a job. Those days, it's not like today. You had to work and play football.
Yeah.
So they sent me a ticket for me to come back and everything was set. So I went to say goodbye to my electrical engineering teacher.
Yeah.
And we started talking. He asked me, why are you going there? So I said, look, I don't have a job. You know, I'm struggling financially. And then we kind of bid farewell. And then the following morning, whether it's morning or night, he calls me and says, can we meet early in the morning? So we meet early in the morning. Then he says, I spoke to a friend of mine who was a company. And I talked to him about you and he's willing to give you a job. And he's also willing to pay for your master's degree.
Oh.
Yeah.
The same institution?
No, a different institution.
Okay.
And I said, great, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And so I went and I got a job. And
is it in the same field of study?
In the same field of study.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was good. Yeah.
And how long did you last there?
No, I worked there. I did my master's there. So I was working and going to school. And my life was a little bit better at the time because the first 4 years of the first 2.5 years I was a student, I was extremely poor. Honestly, there was a time that I was almost homeless.
Wow.
I had no money for rent, no job. And I remember every morning I'd go, looking for a job. And those days I didn't have work permit either.
Wow.
So, there were only specific jobs you could do. So I remember every morning there was this song that kept me going. It was a very encouraging song. So I'd be like down, and then this song would play.
Is it a local song?
No, it was a song that went like, no one can take away your right to never surrender.
Yeah.
So those words kind of motivated me. So I'd be like, no, I'm gonna wake up today, and I'm gonna not give up and look for a job.
Yeah.
And so it was very motivational. But anyway, so when I got the opportunity to do my master's, it was fantastic. Yeah.
So how long was the master's? 2 years as usual?
It took me a long. I was in no rush.
Okay.
Somebody was paying for my education. I had a job. I really needed to slow down because I had put
pushed
so much time. It was
school,
football. That was my life.
It's quite difficult. I'm a master's student at the moment, so I can tell it all.
Yeah, it was
trying to balance those things is not easy.
That was very difficult, and I wasn't gonna rush.
Okay.
Yeah.
So during this entire period you're doing your master's, you still never came back to Kenya?
I never came back, and the reason I never came back is, people don't realize this, but American life can be complicated.
Yep.
So the first year you have your papers because you're a student.
Yep.
So you can't come back, but you can. For me, anyway, I'm too poor to come back because I don't.
You keep emphasizing that point.
It
was difficult, right?
Yeah. So I can't afford the ticket, and then you get your job.
Yeah.
Which at the time they were not strict on work permits.
Okay.
In terms of jobs, so I was able to get it without work permit. So now I have a job and I can afford to come back.
Yep.
But I don't have the paperwork.
So if you come back, you cannot go back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how long did it take you to clear and get those papers?
It took me a while.
Okay.
It took me a while. I worked for a while, and then President Reagan came up with this act, which is if you are a farmer, if you've ever been a farmer, then you would apply for this status, change of status.
Yeah.
And I said, I was a farmer, so you have to prove you're a farmer.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I had worked in, they didn't specify how long.
Yeah.
I had done all kinds of jobs.
Yep. In the US, that is.
Yeah, in the studies, including, jobs in farms.
Yeah.
So that really was helpful.
So you eventually get your papers.
I get my paperwork.
How long did it take you to come back to Kenya? Would you say you were away for, say, 5 years or even more than that?
I think right after that, it didn't take me long after that to come back.
But you were in the US for how long before you came back to Kenya since you went out?
I'm trying to remember.
Must be over 5 years, right?
No, way more than that. All this stuff I'm telling you took a while. I think it was more than 6 years.
Weren't you missing your family?
Yeah, I was. I mean, there was a time my mom would call me.
Yeah.
And the thing about, and I would actually not pick up the phone. And the reason was because, moms just want you to come back.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're afraid of telling them your whole story.
You aren't willing to tell her the truth that you are maybe struggling at that particular
I'm struggling.
Yeah.
And people think you're in America.
That everything is okay.
And everything's okay. And so I didn't want to. And I remember my sister coming over there with my stepbrother. My brother-in-law. And I was so skinny. They thought I was sick. I really was struggling.
Okay.
Yeah, they felt sorry for me. But the thing is that, it takes a while. It takes a while for you to settle down.
Yeah.
And it just depends on the circumstances under which you go there. But, I won't take anything back. I think everything in life is about the experience that you have and what you learn from it and how you grow from it. And I think it shaped my life in a positive way.
Again, nothing good in life ever comes easy, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, how did you eventually get into football? Because I'm told now you have several academies in the United States. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
How did that eventually happen?
It happened, after obviously I got married, and then I had, actually before that, I got a job as an engineer, and I built my career, and I wasn't playing football. So I decided.
So after the college, actually, I was about to ask. Now, when you went into the masters, you stopped playing football completely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I decided I'm done.
Oh, okay.
I'm done with.
At what age was that?
I was still young. I was when I graduated at 25.
Okay. For your undergraduate, right?
For my undergraduate, yeah. And then after that, at the time, mi niliamua tu nimeacha.
Okay.
Yeah, niliamua tu kuanzia leo kwenda mbele sitacheza.
Sichezi ball tena.
Sichezi nini kwa nimeamua.
Okay.
Nita focus on kazi
na shule
na family.
Okay.
Yeah. Ndio baada hiyo nikaenda nikaanzisha family, nika focus on career yangu. Alafu baadaye ikafika wakati ambao opportunity ya kununua professional team ilikuja.
Okay. A professional team were you still living in Alabama?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the opportunity came along, and it was with a club, a franchise. Ulikuwa unanunua franchise. And at the time I had built myself in my career. Okay. So ulikuwa unanunua franchise, and there was only, you could buy a franchise in a specific in a city.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was in Dallas.
Okay.
So already there was a team there.
Okay.
Sasa kulikuwa na opportunity nyingine in a different city ambayo sio iko mbali sana na Dallas. Okay. Sasa nikanunua that right for the franchise, right?
For that club. Yeah. What was the name of the club?
Texas Lightning.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was at the time ilikuwa the largest professional soccer league in the country. Okay. Yeah.
So you bought that and set up an academy, a youth academy?
No, what was it? Was a professional. This was a professional team.
Yeah. So you bought a professional team or just the license?
No,
a team that was already in existence.
License, it meant you had the team.
Okay.
You buy the franchise, then you're operating a team within that, exclusively within that area.
So just make me understand. You bought the license, right? Did you have the mechanisms already around that area? The team was already in existence. There were players and everything.
No. You build the team.
So from scratch.
What happens is, when you're buying a franchise, you provide your financial statements.
Yep.
Because hawakupatii franchise kama wakifikiria kwamba hawezi kuafford. Yeah. So I got the franchise right. Then I started the team, the club.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So a senior team?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how was that?
That was pretty good.
What was the intention for you doing this?
The intention was, of course, I wanted to get involved in football.
Okay.
So ni yangu ilikuwa tu ni kwa just keep, I love football. You know, from childhood, mini football is just part of my life.
Yeah.
So buying that was just a continuation na hiyo mambo ya mpira.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did that come along?
It came along, the Dallas franchise, because I was still a good player, by the way.
Yeah.
Ingawaje nilikuwa nimejiuzulu, but kulikuwa once in a while nilikuwa nacheza na some players.
Okay.
You know, some
just
people
for fun,
from,
right?
Yeah, some good players, by the way. Kulikuwa na wale walikuwa wanacheza national team, other parts of the world.
Yeah.
You know, so wakanialika, wakapenda vile nacheza, nikakuwa marafiki zao.
Yeah.
So I was always involved.
Yeah.
Alafu hii franchise ikaja, and the Dallas franchise, nikaiangalia kidogo, ile interest yangu ikaja, ile ikawa ninio. Sasa nikamua, nikaangalia hiyo, nika learn about hiyo opportunity ya buy a franchise katika neighborhood. Nikaenda nikazungumza na huyo, the guy was running the league.
Yep.
Tukakubaliana kwamba nitanunua hiyo franchise at different city called Arlington.
Yeah.
Ilikuwa neighboring city to Dallas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for how long do you run this?
I ran it for about 5 years.
Not the senior team, right?
It. Yeah.
Oh, you sold it off?
Yeah.
Which year was this?
I remember from around 90 to 95, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay, so no, after selling it off is when you set up the youth academies. I'm not sure about.
No, I actually sold it off. The reason niliuza ni kwa sababu at the time ambao tulikuwa tunanunua hiyo franchise, that was the only major leagues football in Kenya, in the US.
Yeah.
Sasa what happened then, Major League Soccer came along.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it was a different level.
Yeah.
So they started this Major League Soccer. Sasa for me, it didn't make sense because there was an FC Dallas team.
Yeah.
So unajua all attention goes into that. So we became, from first year tulikuwa second tier. For me, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So nika decide at that point, nika decide mimi nitaiuza.
Okay. So you sold it off then. In terms of football, what did you do after that?
In terms of football, no, I just kind of played casually.
Yeah.
You know, started brought in friends of ours, some of them from Kenya, tukaanzisha timu yetu just for fun.
Okay.
Yeah. But at the time, I was pretty much done.
Then how did you become involved in football in the US in terms of the youth structures?
Yeah. So
correct me if I'm wrong. You have an academy over there?
Yes.
A football academy?
Yes.
Yep.
So imagine my time when I nikiquit your professional team, my son was 5 years old.
When you sold it off?
When I sold it off.
Yeah.
So mimi nika focus on family and just getting my son to play recreationally.
Yeah.
Nika focus on other things, my career.
Yeah.
So ikafika wakati ile my son became about 10 years old. Now at that point ilikuwa he had to look for a team to start ile competitive football.
Yeah.
Because ilikuwa inaanzisha umri wa miaka 10.
Yeah.
So nikaanza kuangalia. You know, I started looking and saying, okay, where can I play? And I had an indoor team nilikuwa nafundisha na coach indoor team.
Okay.
Yeah, bunch of kids.
Around the neighborhood.
Around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So nilikuwa tunasaidia tu.
Yeah.
Alafu ikafika wakati my son reach your age. Alikuwa very good player.
Yeah.
So nikaanza kuangalia ndio nikaona
there's a gap.
No, asikupenda. Like everywhere I go, hata zile team wa top clubs.
Yeah.
Nilikuwa naambia this is the top club.
Yeah.
So I was not a trained coach, but nilikuwa naenda naangalia.
Yeah.
I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
So the only team ambao nilipata ambao ilinifurahisha ilikuwa ni timu moja ilikuwa mbali sana, ilikuwa ni mostly Hispanic kids.
Okay.
Sasa to get there ilikuwa inanibidi ni drive about 1 hour one way.
That's
But
far
I was
away.
willing to.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I talked to a friend of one of the parents of the team that I was coaching, akaniambia, hey, why are you doing that? Why don't you start your own team? So nikamwambia, no, I'm not interested. Akasema, we'll help you. Yeah. So that's how I got started. My first team started from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did that develop into I mean, you can tell me, but I hear you have a string of academies in the
Yes.
US.
So aliponiambia, my interest peaked on starting an academy.
Yeah.
So mi nikasema, okay, what I'll do is start an academy. But I started thinking about how am I going to build it?
Yeah.
That's how I always work.
Mhm.
How will I grow it from here? How will I make it one of the best academies?
Mm.
Sasa ndi hapo nika kuja na a vision, a plan
Okay.
of how to get from where I was to be one of the top academies.
Okay.
And part of that involved buying building a facility.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is still in Dallas?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in a city called McKinney, but it's practically the suburb of Dallas.
So it's still in operation?
Yes.
Is it just a football academy, or how many levels do you have in that particular facility?
The levels are depends on the number of kids in the age group.
Yep.
So Nakuja, it starts from 10 years, 8 years old actually, or younger,
Yep.
all the way to 19. So you come
Okay.
in, depending on your level, we put you where you belong.
So basically pay to play, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that what you, until recently, what you've been doing professionally? Is that where you earn your bread?
Yeah, so what happened was, as the academy, so I had this vision about the academy,
Yep.
and it included building a complex, all that stuff. So when the time came when I started doing really well.
Yep.
And then I remember telling my wife, I'm quitting. I'm thinking of quitting my
Your career,
job.
engineering, that is.
And I was very successful at the time.
Yeah.
So my wife was very surprised and against it. So she was like, how?
Yeah.
Are you just going to coach? I said, yeah, I think I can build a good business from it.
Yeah.
But she wasn't very confident.
Yeah.
But it's something I really loved.
Okay.
So she kind of supported me on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long have you been running until to date? Is it?
I started in 2001. That's a long time.
That's quite a long time.
Yeah.
How many kids across all levels does your?
Right now, 600.
600 kids?
Yeah, plus.
That's quite a huge number.
Yeah.
And how many staff do you currently employ?
I don't know the number right now. It keeps changing, but we do have quite a large staff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Will you say you've been successful in doing that?
I was rated the #1 soccer academy. Of course, there could be multiple rankings.
Yeah.
But one of the major rankings rated as the #1 soccer academy in the whole of North Texas, which North Texas is one of the largest football area in the whole of United States. Yeah. But when I went into football, my vision was not just to do an academy.
Yeah.
My vision was to build soccer complexes, and then to run leagues, to run tournaments. Mm-hmm. So it was this whole idea of building business
from football.
From football.
Around football.
Yeah, and it became very successful. Yeah, commercialized it.
Is it the same thing that you are aiming to replicate now, coming back locally?
Yeah, it is.
You've been successful in the US, running that youth academy, 600 plus kids employed, I believe, hundreds of people, supporting football and developing players in the US, specifically in Texas. Is it the same vision you have for football in Kenya, or what pushes you now to come back to Kenya to vie for the FKF presidency? At what particular moment did you have that thought?
So years later, of course, I'm in my academy, things are going well. No reason for me to come over.
Yeah.
And, it's like everybody else, your kids are grown, you start thinking, what do I want to do with my life?
Yeah.
And there's always this interest in Kenya football you follow.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'd always been interested in what I could do for Kenyan football. And, when my son graduated and he actually played in Germany
professionally
for 5 years, yeah.
Oh.
And after, it just gets to a time where you're saying, what am I going to do beyond this? Mm-hmm. And prior to that, actually, if you go back, I'd been coming over, giving things to some of the clubs. And I focused mostly on people who had studied academy, youth soccer. That was where my passion was.
Yeah.
So I'd come find somebody who did academy and I'd give them. So it got to a point where I would be like, what do I want to do? So my interest in Kenya peaked, and I talked to Gor Mahia.
Yep.
I was introduced to him through a friend. He's actually a former national team player that actually works for me.
Yep.
And then we started talking, and I told Ghost, man, I really want to contribute to Kenyan soccer. And I think what my passion is youth football.
Yeah.
And we talked about, I'd love to coach the under 17, because I felt like, under 17 national team, because I felt like there was a tremendous opportunity to build a 17 national team. Because like I told you, I knew those youth players who were playing for Nigeria. And I knew we could do better. But what was lacking, I thought, was organization. So I thought, okay, I'll come in there, bring the structure that's needed in the youth national team. Deal with the financials. I was prepared to spend my own money. Deal with the financial issues that come along. But I had the confidence that I would eventually be able to turn it into something good and go look for sponsorship money and kind of go for. So that was my vision of this U17 national team. So I called Nick Ghost gave me Nick Mwendo's number, and I called him, and we spoke, and he was very open to it. And he suggested to me that under 20 was a better option because under 17 countries cheated. So you have an under 17 playing a 25-year-old. So his reasoning was that it's just difficult to cover the age difference. He said 20, 25, possible. So it made a lot of sense. So we spoke. He asked me to send him a proposal, and I did. Barry responded, and then the whole story kind of disappeared.
So that is what basically pushed. Which year was this?
I don't remember the exact year, but this is not too many years ago. But then what happened was, as I was doing all that, I had a friend of mine who's I played with years ago, and Rick Solomon is the head of coaching, Kenya, Coaches Association. Yeah. And so I spoke to him, and he said, Sam, if you really want to be involved in Kenya football, it doesn't matter what level you do, as long as you're under the federation, you're going to run into problems. So he said, if I were you, I would focus on, he casually said, maybe being a president of the federation. And at the time I said, no, I don't have the time. It didn't seem like something I wanted to do. But then I seriously started to think about it. Then I went from that thought to researching, talking to people, trying to figure out how realistic it was, what the challenges were. And I felt like I had a chance.
Now you've traversed the country. You've now been involved at the grassroots level to really understand what Kenyan football is all about. You've met the delegates. You've met various stakeholders. I'm sure now you have a realistic picture of what football is like in Kenya and what it is, what it takes for you to get the top seat. Having seen all that and experienced all that, do you believe you have a fair chance to get the top seat?
I believe I have as good a chance as anybody. I really do believe that. And I think it's because I did an analysis of what it takes. And we started campaigning a long time ago, over 1.5 years ago. So, you look at the voting system itself. And so I did my analysis there. And I do believe I have a chance. And
looking at the requirements, the Electoral Board released the roadmap recently and the requirements. I've seen online people saying you're more of an American citizen. I'm not the one who's saying that. I'm sure you've got those comments wherever you go or even online. One of the various requirements is tax clearance, DCI clearance. I'm sure you've looked at all those documents, right? Just a general answer from you. Do you think you meet all the requirements? Because
I have a better chance of being let me put it this way. I have a better chance of being cleared by DCI than Nick Mwendo has. Let me just say that. So I think for me, if you look at the qualification requirements, I do meet all the qualification requirements. So I'm not worried about that.
So be it tax, security clearance,
I've done all that.
You're sure you have everything that is required?
Not sure. I have the papers. I've been cleared.
That's good to hear. Now looking back again, now I go back to your campaigns. I was with Jack Oguda on the previous episode. He's one of the aspirants. And my co-host, Muturi Mutota, a celebrated journalist, was saying one of the major things that is ailing Kenyan football is that voting pattern, where you only have 90 to 94 delegates that are selecting the president, the person who's holding Kenyan football at stake. And he said that is one of the major problems, because you have 94 delegates, and it is, to be fair, that is what happened in the previous election, and that is what has been happening. So you have 94 delegates that only need to be bribed, for lack of a better word. And he says that is what is ailing Kenyan football, because whoever has more money among the aspirants is who is going to get into power. Now, you're coming from the US, where systems work. You don't need to bribe anyone. I mean, Obama rose from, for lack of a better, from a nobody to become the president of the US against all odds. You know, over there systems work. I don't think you'd have enough money to bribe anyone there. I'm not sure about how politics works there, but at least I'm sure about the Kenyan politics, how it works. Yeah. It's basically bribes that do work. Yeah. Are you cognizant of that fact? And, actually someone was telling me that yesterday that there's no need for these presidential aspirants to even do manifestos, because as a fan or as a journalist, I will read the manifestos and probably think Kempes is the right guy. Yeah. He has experience in youth football. The vision he has for Kenyan football is what we need to take us to the next 5 World Cups or so, produce the best players. But the delegates, they don't read that thing. Are you cognizant of that fact? And what are you telling these delegates when you meet them?
Yes, I am. I'm cognizant of the level of corruption in this country. It's a cultural problem. We all know that. Yeah. It's an issue that, hopefully will have to be dealt with over. It's hurting us as a country. Yep. So I do recognize that. I've been around here. I come here all the time. Yep. And go back. I've done businesses here. People have stolen my money. So
sorry for that. I think it's a story for everyone who goes abroad and tries to do anything back in Kenya.
I know that. So I've tried different things, and so I've had that experience. So no, that's true. And it's also true that the idea of 94 delegates voting and sub-county clubs not voting makes no sense. And the whole 94 delegate thing was brought about by the current federation to be able to control the process, because you can easily manipulate 94 voters. And the biggest problem with that system is, I think the clubs, Premier League clubs, the NSL, Division 1, is a lot harder to manipulate. As you go lower in that chain,
it becomes easier.
It becomes easier. Yeah. So that's a problem. So we need to go back to a system where clubs vote.
Yep.
That will be the best. And if I'm elected, I promise you that's what I'd do. So having said that, things are never as straightforward as people say. Yep. Now, if you had told me that was the case, if you had told me that that's what happened before, I would have believed you. I would have believed you. I would have said, that's what happens to Kenyan football. And I believed that until I started meeting people and traveling. I think one thing we forget sometimes is, and there's truth to that, to the idea of people get bribed and stuff like that. And a lot of people think that that's the thing. But I think there's a truth that people don't understand. There's a lot of people, including a lot of the people at the level of the county, that are making a lot of sacrifice for Kenyan football.
That's true.
That are spending their own money, losing their own money. So it's not as simplistic as these people just wait to be bribed. Those people are the core of football.
Definitely, yeah. The grassroots.
Exactly. And I've met lots of them, and lots of them are spending tons of money, losing, some of them selling their homes because of the love of the football. So when I talk to them and I hear their stories and what they're having to go through, I don't believe that anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't believe it's as simple as those guys are just there because they're bribed.
Yeah.
I think there's more to it. And I honestly believe, now, don't get me wrong, there's some truth to what people are saying about bribe, but that's not the whole truth. And I believe that there are people there that if you sell them a vision of football that is real and hopeful, that those people will buy into it, and enough of them will make the right decision. They may refuse, some of them may refuse to take the money if it means compromising their vote.
Yep.
Some of them will take the money and still vote for the
right
people.
thing.
I think the bigger issue is, can we make sure that the voting system is such that it is secretive and there's no way for somebody to verify who you voted for?
Yeah.
And we eliminate anything that has to do with the verification, so that if you give somebody money, you're giving them at your own risk.
Yep.
And they can come and tell you, I voted for you, when in reality they didn't, and there's no way for you to verify. That's our fight in this process. And we have to eliminate going in with a phone, anything within the process that allows somebody to figure out who's voted for who. That's our enemy.
Okay.
And so, true, the 94 delegate system is not good, encourages corruption, was there for that reason. But there's also, and there's some truth to, people get corrupted and money does corrupt, but there's also, that's not the whole story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of that, the voter register was released recently. There's been a lot of petitions already. What is your take on that? A lot of allegations that the current FKF officers, manipulated the entire register. Almost, someone was telling me today that almost 80% of the register is faulty. You and your team, what do you make of that? And have you raised petitions already?
Yeah, I think the idea that this federation was going to run free, fair, and credible election is a fallacy. It was a fallacy from the beginning. It's still a fallacy. And anybody who thought that they were going to run a free, fair, and credible election either doesn't know this federation or is living a lie.
Okay.
These guys have a history of corruption, Everything they do is about self-preservation.
Okay.
How do we stay in office long? They don't care about football, the development of football. They just want to be in office and to keep doing what they're doing. And they've corrupted our football. They've messed up our football in such a way that it's hard to believe. And so they will do anything to stay in office.
Okay.
They will break the country laws. They will break their own laws. They'll break the Constitution.
Yep.
So we've known that for years.
Yep.
So what they're doing is not new.
Yep.
Is expected. And we're doing all we can to make sure that this time around they're not going to get away with it.
So speaking of that, you put a case at the Court of Arbitration of Sports.
Mm-hmm.
How is that coming along? And don't you fear that could be one of the reasons they will use not to clear you, because you have an ongoing court case at the CAS, Court of Arbitration of Sport. Are you willing to put that out for this process to continue, or what's the talk around it at the moment?
I've never heard that I can be banned for where is that coming from? Because
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no, they can't ban me for that. I mean, you can't put anything out of this guy,
Yep.
Anything's possible with
not
these
really
guys.
ban, but bar you from contesting, or just clearing you from contesting.
There's nothing in the Constitution or anywhere.
Okay.
That's a right of mine as a citizen.
Yep.
People have been suing as long as I remember.
Yep.
Not necessarily in CAS alone, but even within
the Kenyan judicial system.
They go to court as well from time to time. Is somebody going to bar them as well? So at the end of the day,
Fair response.
Yeah, but I think the problem that I have with this federation is we can say a lot of things. You do all kinds of things, but they're still there.
Yep.
Think of what Murkomen said the other day, right? He talked about the ineligibility of these guys, right?
Yep.
That they serve their terms.
Yep.
And they talked about the Constitution says this. So they're broken the law, right?
Yep.
The registrar, Rose Wasike, wrote a letter to them stating that they had broken the law. But what's happened? They're still there.
Yep. They're
still going. So these guys know that we say all these things and nothing happens.
Yeah.
The only thing that these people listen to is are the courts.
Okay.
That's it.
Yep.
So anything we do sometimes they just keep doing what they're doing. So for me, there are local cases going on, and some of the cases I think I've done a good job to slow them down.
Yep.
And there are cases going on that have been filed locally.
Yep.
Because they have broken so many laws.
Yep.
But for me, the most important thing has always been and is, how can we run free, fair, and credible election?
Mm-hmm.
How can we make sure that beyond the election, we don't have issues of litigation? How can we make sure that we protect AFCON? How can we make sure that we allow qualified individuals to be able to vie?
Yep.
And so that's why I filed for the CAS case, because that path leads to those things. This path we're headed, which what we have to go through.
Yep.
Think about it. There's no fair, free, and fair elections. You see what's happening now. A lot of the things you mentioned are happening.
Yep.
Then litigations will continue, guaranteed. We're jeopardizing AFCON, because if somebody sues and is successful, then we jeopardize AFCON. People who are qualified are at risk of being prevented from running. So we have all those things that could happen as a result of this path.
Yep.
So for me, this is sad where we're going. And you look at the timetable that they have.
I was actually going to come to that. With all those litigations and whatever is going through, do you think we'll have elections by December? By the first week of December, the second week, do you think we'll be done with the entire process?
It will be a flawed election. It will be an election that doesn't represent the will of the stakeholders, because it will be corrupted, it will be flawed, it will not be, there's nothing about the way this exercise is going on that makes sense, that even meets the criteria of the Electoral Code. There's nothing. You look at this timetable. They shortened the time for people to
even raise the petitions.
Yep. People are staying there for hours. I had people there from morning till 8 p.m. or thereabouts. What are they gonna do with this huge number of complaints? What happens if the time runs out and they have still a large number? How do they handle it? And the timeline is there. What are they going to do?
Do they have an appeals committee?
Appeals committees.
The Electoral Board itself, not even the Federation.
The Electoral Board is an extension of the Federation. These guys are personal friends of each other. And the chairman of the board is supposed to be a lawyer, but I've listened to him defend the absurd. And it's just incredible. And these are the guys that are oversighting.
No, I think the secretary is the lady. The secretary is the one that is a lawyer. The chairman is an academician.
The chairman, what's his name?
Ziwani Wheeler.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. He is supposed to know better. but I've seen him defend the Federation to the point of absurdity.
Okay.
Yeah, you just look at it and go, how could he? They're shameless. So you're asking people like that, who are so shameless, go in front of people, look at people's face, people in the eye, and say things that absolutely make no sense.
So for you, within the timeline set, there's absolute no chance of having a free and fair, credible election.
It's not fair.
What would you suggest? My
suggestion is get rid of the Electoral Board, this charade that's going on of an election, because we have the process that's going on now that is unreasonable and not fair.
Yep.
And so we're going through this process where you have, lists that are tampered with.
Yep.
And we have all these cases, and we've got this short amount of time that we have to investigate those cases. That is not realistic.
Yeah.
It's
impossible.
And even you can go through each item in terms of timeline. Is a very short window that doesn't have a place for, just reasonable appeal.
Yeah.
And that's not good.
So your suggestion is, if that is the case, what's your suggestion?
My suggestion based on what? On the process?
If we have timelines, FIFA says we have to be done with the elections by December, I think 9th, the national elections. you're not the first one who's saying within these timelines, we cannot have a fair process. It's just, I mean, the roadmap was released, I think, last week on Monday. By now, we have over thousands of petitions already.
Yes.
And by next week, presidential candidates are supposed to submit their papers. You say the timelines are not good enough, and you're not the first one who's saying this. So what will be the best solution for all the candidates?
So for me, we gotta stop putting this artificial life. More important than anything else is to have an election that is fair, free, and credible. Because if we don't, expediency is never a solution to anything. You don't compromise things for the sake of expediency, and that's what we're doing. And it's really not for it's just they're trying to get there because they have this pressure from FIFA for them to meet those deadlines.
They would have done that earlier.
Exactly. And so that's where we are. For me, I think we need to have a normalization committee. So that we can have
enough time to have a good process.
It's not going to be long. We can have a board that is
running
independent, and has the interest of people. We can have a process that makes sense. And I think we can extend it to maybe another 2 months. And Chan will but Chan can still operate with other federations. So I think for me, it makes sense. We have an opportunity here with the normalization committee to do right by soccer and to have a reset and move forward in a direction that makes sense. So my hope is still that is there. I'm still hopeful about the CAS case. I'm hopeful about the local cases. My hope is that something will kick in and stop this process. Yeah.
Okay, that's a very good response. I think my last question to you, because we are running out of time, would be: you have already settled in the US, your family is in the US, you have businesses in the US, you are an US citizen, if I'm not wrong. In the event, you said you've been campaigning for almost 2 years now, and you have a fair chance of getting the presidency. I mean, anyone that gets into it has a fair chance of getting the presidency. In the event you are elected the Football Kenya Federation president, we've seen cases of, I think, a deputy governor in one of the Rift Valley regions who is a US citizen. He's never serving his people. He's always in the US. So as a neutral or as a football fan, my question will be: if you elected the Football Kenya Federation president, are you willing to forego your interest in the US, you leave your family in the US and now come and serve Kenyan football? Or from the top of your mind, have you thought about such a scenario?
These were things I planned a long time ago. By the way, I've completely moved over to Kenya.
Congratulations.
Now I'm just visiting. If I have to go to the US, I'm over here visiting there. And I've sold most of my 70% of my business. I only own 30%. I'm not involved in the everyday running of the business. So I've already made my transition. There's no way you can run Kenya football as a part-time. I'll immerse myself into Kenyan football. I'm committed to building Kenya football. I always tell people that, so before I say something else, is I agree with you. You have to be here committed to, it's a full-time, more than a full-time job. But when people ask me things like that, I say, you've got people like Nick Mwendwa, prior to that Nyamoya, who are here full-time. What do they do?
Fair response again.
Yeah. So it's not, but I'm here now.
Okay, so now as a parting shot, looking into your camera, I believe it's this one. What are you selling to Kenyan football fans and stakeholders? What will be your, in very brief words?
Yeah.
What is your parting shot, and why Sammy Owino Kempes as the FKF president?
Yeah, my parting shot would be, I love football. This is my life. Football has been good to me. And, in many ways, I believe football can do the same to a lot of young people. Football can do the same to communities and the country. There's a lot that football can do for our nation, for our young people, for football fans. And, we've struggled for many years, and people have given up hope. But I'm very hopeful about our football. And the reason is because I meet and see a lot of people who, despite what we're going on, make a lot of sacrifices and love football. What's lacking in our football is the leadership at the top, And I believe that with the right person, that somebody who has a vision for football, who can come in and build structures and be able to create a leadership that starts from the grassroots, that we can bring back our football and make it one of the best in the whole of the continent. And I believe that I have all the experience needed to be able to make that possible.
Thank you so much, Kempes, and all the best in the campaign.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope we can meet after that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.